sugar, please. Straight talk, sounds plenty sweet to me.
Seminar attendees at Raleigh Studios in Hollywood received a crash course in screenwriting from Tom Schulman, a true master of the craft. Mr. Schulman won the Screenplay Academy Award for writing Dead Poet Society. He also wrote the smash hit film What About Bob, starring Bill Murray, and co-wrote the family film blockbuster Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Mr. Schulman has also produced movies, including the provocative film Indecent Proposal, starring Robert Redford. This in-depth interview was conducted by James Jordan, screenplay consultant and owner of Candid Coverage.
It was a quiet Saturday morning.
Zielinski! Give it a rest! It's Saturday!
Professor Wayne Zielinski was hard at work on his new invention.
This thing works, it'll put us right up there with the invention of electricity.
That didn't quite work.
Did you get the machine to work?
A few more bucks to get out.
Then something quite unexpected
Where are
happened.
the kids?
I haven't seen him since I left this morning.
It shrunk the kids.
Nick, what happened?
It works. Diane, I got something real important to tell you.
Are you trying to tell me?
The machine works? Do the kids know?
Well, yeah, the kids know.
That's great!
It's not that great. I
Why?
shrunk the kids, and the Thompson kids too. They're about this big. Threw them out with the trash.
What?
They're in the backyard.
Walt Disney Home Video presents The Last Frontier.
Dad can fix us, right, Nick?
Sprinklers!
I'll tell you, their size. It's a jungle out there.
Nicky, get out of there!
Now, while the professor is looking for the kids,
Just gotta keep our eyes open.
they're taking matters into their own hands.
I say that, and it's ours!
They better behave themselves.
Something's very weird here.
What is it? Earthquake! No worse! Lawnmower!
Rick Moranis is Professor Wayne Zielinski.
Are you saying that machine
Blew up my kid?
No.
If the machine had blown up the kids, there'd be pieces of them everywhere.
Wayne, did you report some missing children?
Oh, there must be some mistake. Ours are in the backyard. Right, honey?
Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
We're all the size of boogers!
Dad, don't eat me!
Are there themes that you just feel particularly close to that you like exploring more than once?
You know, the themes that are closest to me are the themes in Dead Poet Society, so it's very hard to go back without feeling like, uh-oh, I'm doing this again. So that's done. I have to keep looking for something else. You know?
Do you have any rules of comedy that you use when you put the script?
Yeah, it's got to be funny. Literally, that is the only rule.
Well, so this trusted group, do you give them like an early draft that sort of tests the humor? Do you bounce jokes off of anybody or situations?
Bounce jokes, but sometimes we'll sit down. If I think I'm onto something funny, I'll sit down and say, you know, I've had this idea, and here's the gist of the story. And I try to tell them the whole story in as much detail as they can stand. And, you know, just to see whether I'm getting the smiles and the laughs and so forth, and whether they genuinely think it's funny or whether they're just humoring, you know. So, I think it's important, you know, it's the same thing as, you know, the comedians going and testing out their jokes on Monday night, you know, before they put them on stage or on television, you know. In front of
Do you recommend people doing, you know, open mic improv, anything to get in front of an audience so that they can actually test their humor?
I've never done that. That's the most terrifying thing I can imagine. But, you know, when I started, I was in an acting workshop, and, you know, the teacher said, if you want to write or direct, you're going to act first, which I already split my wrist, but I did it. I think it was helpful. I think it's helpful to do improvisation because as a writer, that's what you're doing. You put it on one character's hat and then the other, and, you know, that's how the scene evolved. So, it surprises me how many writers I know sort of admit at some point that they started as an actor. And I think there are a lot of good actors who become good writers because the process is so simple.
To take an acting class.
Take an acting class, yeah. Improvisation, doing stand-up is, it's a whole other art form.
But you find out if you can make people laugh.
Yeah, Ed Solomon, who's wrote Men in Black, has started out when he was a student at UCLA. He was writing jokes for stand-up comedians. He'd go over to the Improv and sell jokes. He just has an amazing facility for that. I don't have that, but I don't know if it's ever been on stage, but for some people, the ability to write jokes, it just comes naturally. But you would want to test them, as much as possible, and that's why the studios are testing movies all the time in front of, preview audiences, because you want to know what's working.
Well, it's better for you to test it before
Absolutely.
the studio.
Yeah. The more you've tested it, the more friends who've read it, the better off you are. And you really want to get the calls at 2 a.m. from somebody who said, I really didn't want to read this, and I couldn't put it down. I'm sorry to wake you up, but this is amazing. You want to get that. You don't want people to just go, it's really good, really good. You want hyperbole from your friends, and only then are you going to get something good from others.
And give them permission to say, I think it's horrible,
Absolutely.
I think it sucks.
Absolutely.
And I'll still be your friend.
Not only permission, you really have to kind of, nudge them a little bit. I know that scene didn't work for you. Make them feel like you're begging them to say, come on, I'm telling you it's working. Because it's better that than having them be, hold back. Because no one who doesn't tell you the truth is doing you any favors.
No, especially when it goes to the studio.
Absolutely.
How did you keep from being pigeonholed in any one genre?
I guess I was, I don't know. I mean, I got lucky. The day that Dead Poets sold, I also sold a script called Love at Second Sight, which was a comedy, which got made into a movie called Second Sight, I think. And so, all of a sudden, I went from, zero to a guy who could write poets. So Disney was doing a lot of comedy, so they hired me to do rewrite Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and What About Bob. But at the same time, I was interested in stuff like Medicine Man, so I wrote that. So, it's a good question because a lot of times, particularly when one thing is the first thing that pops, those are the only kinds of offers you get. I have friends who write comedy who are really good drama writers, but they never get an opportunity to write a drama.
Well, don't you just have to butt heads with your agent and say, I want to write this, and you go out and try to sell it?
Exactly. Or, cut your price or whatever you have to do. You can, it's the pitch, how you deal in the room with the producers in the studio. It has a lot to do with, whether you're going to get the job. And so many of these jobs now are sort of, little circuses where they've got 15, 20 acts waiting to come in one after the other. So if you're the act that somehow wows them, then the only way you can do it is just give it your best shot. But if your ideas are the funniest idea for that script, and you're not an insanely expensive writer, you'll probably get the job. So, go for the stuff that people don't expect you to do. The whole thing is just your gut instincts. A scene is, there are 5 different ways to do it. You just say to yourself, I think this is the best one. You don't even know why, but that's the one to pick. And you just have to hope that your instincts, so much of writing is about your first instincts, your first ideas. Sometimes when I'm working on a script and I realize I've done 20 drafts for the, various masters, I go back and look at the first draft and I go, oh, this is, I've lost sight of all the impulses that got this thing going, and it can be a huge help to look at the first, it's the first impression you have, the first impulse you have. Most of the times, those are the best. So in general, I make very quick decisions. I'll think there are 3 ways to do this, and I'll just go, this is the best one. And I think I'm almost always right about that.
Well, I would like you to educate us on the business side of things, because I've been fascinated by the fact that a script will just seem to ignite in fire and get all of these major actors interested, and all of a sudden there's a bidding war, and they buy the script, and then they get all these major actors on board, and then all of a sudden the director's picked, and then it's like, okay, how are we going to write the script? And I'm like, why would you touch it when it got this many people hot in the first place? Why would you not go more with that first draft? Why does the director have them go through 20 drafts when it was obvious that the first one had a lot of fire to it?
Yeah. I mean, what happens is there are only a few people in Hollywood that can give the studios the kind of comfort level they need to spend these huge sums of money. So, and there are a few directors who are in that category. So hooking one of those guys, or when the ladies, I guess they're not ladies, but hooking one becomes it's so important that if they'll do just about anything to keep that director involved. And when you're spending $150 or $200 million, you've got to trust, you have to have the full belief of the guy who's doing it, and you have to trust them. So, I mean, from my point of view, I was lucky because I was at Disney in the late 80s, early 90s when they were sort of trying to build the franchise up. And their belief was, we're going to develop the scripts, we're going to develop the movie we want to make, and we're not going to change it for anybody. And I found out that they passed on many directors on a lot of my scripts, directors I wish I had had, because those directors wanted to make changes, and Jeffrey Katzenberg just said, no, this is the movie we're making. Very, very few people do that, and are willing to just keep sort of looking. And they would find people that may not give them the comfort level, but they knew the movie they wanted to make. But the budgets have gotten so astronomical that's it's directors generally sell themselves by how they want to change the script. That's the other way it goes too. You don't walk in and say, my vision is this particular. You don't paint the visual vision. You say, these are the problems with the script that I'm going to solve. So, in that way that leads to a rewrite, and the whole thing either gets better or it comes unraveled.
There seem to be writers that work extremely well with directors and those that don't. What do you think are some qualities that we as writers can sort of make ourselves the director's best friend?
Well, I think you do, as a writer, want to try to give the director's vision a chance, and you have to really be honest about that. If you feel like from the get-go the vision just gives you stomach cramps, you shouldn't do it, because you're cheating him and cheating yourself. So I think if you hear something, and to me it's a gut instinct. If I hear something that makes me go, wow, I can't wait to get back and write that. What a great idea! I wish I'd thought of that for that scene. Then great, I'm happy to do it. If it's something that just makes me go, oh my God, this is a disaster, I'll try to wrap my head around it and then go, you know what, I'm just not the guy for this. This is a disaster. So, and usually you get fired, but it's better than spending a lot of time eviscerating your own work. Better to let somebody else do it. So I think you want to try to give people's ideas a chance, but if they don't work, move on.
Has there been something that you have done? Because you mentioned your instincts and you rely on your instincts, and your commercial instincts are as good as anybody's in Hollywood. Did you do something early on in your career to sort of train your instincts to sort of be in tune with what seems to be very commercial?
No. And I don't think my instincts are as commercial as others. I mean, I have lots of movies that nobody went to see. So it's to me, it's just about trying to get the things that if the writing doesn't please me, I have a feeling it's not going to please anybody.
So you set the bar very high for yourself.
I set the bar as high for myself as I possibly can.
Yeah.
I want the script that I'm writing to dazzle me in some way. To just. In part of the field, one of the reasons I go through all this stuff with these notes on the pages is that as I write, I'm just in fear that when I get to the ending, which feels like it's going to be so good, that it's not going to work. that I can't make it work and that I've miscalculated and that the whole project was a waste of time. So I go as fast as I can to get there. I plan it as carefully as I can, so just so that there's nothing but full confidence that it will work. And sometimes you get there, you get to that moment, you get to that thing that and you just go, oh my God, it's not working. And that's the end of that script, or at least that at the end of that ending, and I hope you can salvage it. So, I want it to affect me in that way.
How much do you think the emotion of fear is just the overriding emotion that Hollywood is functioning on right now, with studios and executives and directors?
I think it's always been fear. I think it's a high stakes, gamble no matter what. All back when budgets were $3 million, that was a huge amount of money. I think it was the original budget for Cleopatra was 8, and turned into 13, and 13 or 14 turns out to be the equivalent of $400 million today. I mean, that's so even back when you would read that budgets were $800,000, $900,000, that was a lot of money, and it was a big risk. I think Cleopatra was 26. I think it finally came in at 26. The first question is, will the spec market come back? Yes. I mean, it comes back because what happens is everybody gives up on it. And so the few of you who are out there, or maybe even writing specs, suddenly there are very few of them, and they're able to sort of get noticed. But as soon as the spec market comes back, thousands of people go, oh my God, there's billions to be made in the spec market. We all write our spec scripts. There's a deluge of spec scripts. None of them sell. It's going to continue to be harder as long as budgets remain as high as they are. I think the spec independent market is kind of where it may grow, because the budgets there are sort of what, in actual dollars, what they were 20 years ago. You can make a movie for $3 to $12 to $15 million, and that world sort of will always support specs because in general producers can't buy a book cheaply enough to do it for that low of a budget. So originals tend to reign in that world. So I think as long as we're all willing to look at the spec market realistically and sell our spec scripts to the Fox Searchlights and those kinds of companies or producers who are attached to those companies, there'll be a market for it. But those companies right now don't want to develop anything. They just want, and that helps the spec market too, because they want the script and the package done before they even put a pen into it. So don't give up on the spec script. As far as developing a spec with a company, when I was starting out, I did it, and I think if you really find that the people you're working with have great ideas and they're helping you make your script into something better than you could do alone, do it. But they don't own it. You own it, and make that clear from the beginning. So that, because I did it a couple times, and in both cases, I found that once they got rejected, those companies got rejected a couple times, they kind of gave up on helping me sell it, but they wouldn't sort of say, it's all yours now, go away. They didn't want to give it up in case it did sell. So they became sort of hangers on in a way that was not really fair. So, and I didn't make it clear from the beginning, I'm writing this, this is mine. So I think you want to, if you can, sort of make the business separation clear at the very beginning.
But you think it can give you an edge? Do you think it's
yeah, to the extent that they're willing to go to, if you're working with a company that has a deal at a studio, it's probably better for that script to come in through that company. But you need to find out where that company is on the hierarchy of the studio's attention at that time. Every time I've written a spec and I sit with my agents and we talk about which production companies at which studios we should let take it into that studio, the question of who's up and who's down at that studio is always really interesting. So there may be 5 or 6 or even 10 production companies that have deals on at a given studio, but only 1 or 2 are really important to that studio and can actually get the attention of the studio. The others are all companies that the studio is sort of looking to get rid of.
Well,
so
the last writer's strike proved that
that's
out.
Right, that's right.
It really did.
So you want to make sure that the production company you're working with is hot.
Do you think there's going to be more demand for comedies given the current economy?
I have no idea. You know, that's.
I hope so. I mean, this one needs to laugh.
Yeah.
I mean, you look on television, there's no sitcoms anymore. Everyone's depressed. Great Depression, there were comedies everywhere.
Right.
Where are the comedies now?
Well, the good news is that comedy for the studios, the comedies are cheap, fairly inexpensive. You know, you can make, even if you get two big players, Will Ferrell and somebody else, you're going to get in Vince Vaughn say it's still only an $80 million movie instead of a $160 million movie. The bad news is that most domestic comedies don't do well overseas. So there's always that reluctance because there's not that instant foreign sale.
Unless you can find that universal humor that can go into 100 different languages.
Yeah. It's such a minefield out there. I can't even tell you. It's just unbelievable.
On these projects that you really love, from the time you're making the notes and putting them in the drawer to the time you're actually making the notebook, what's that gestation time now? What are we
It really depends. Dead Poets Society, I think I started talking about the idea to friends in 1982. So I think I was making notes for about 3 years, and then that's how long the notes were going in. And I wrote a draft of it in '84 where I had no idea what I was writing about. It was just 120 pages that just had no idea what it was doing. I mean, I thought I had all these interesting characters and stories, and I didn't. So I literally I never looked at that thing again. But and that's kind of back to what that other gentleman said about writing without knowing what your ending was. I didn't know.
Well, sometimes don't you just have to, I mean, as you're building your binder, don't you just have to say, if I don't know the ending, so be it?
Oh, yeah. You live with it. You do, but, again, it's like being on the psychiatrist couch. Are you going to have that aha moment where you realize, oh, my God, my mother beat me when I was 3. That's what I'm having all this. You may have that, you may not. And you may never get to that. So if you put in a lot of time writing the actual scene, they may help you get there. But the revelation may be something entirely unexpected, and in which case, all the things that you thought were, going to help support the revelation that it was your mother all along, no, it wasn't. It was, your grandfather who molested you, and then you got a whole other movie. So you got everything else. So you got to do all the writing to get there. For me, the writing on all these notes, but when you start actually committing it to that final draft format with the exterior and all that, it takes, for me anyway, it takes on a kind of solidity that's hard to get rid of. Whereas if it's just in these notes and they're in there in some random form, what do I care?
Free spirit.
Yeah. If they all got flushed away, it's okay, big deal. But if once you start calling these the pages of your script, then they become precious and hard to get rid of. I'm having that problem right now. I'm rewriting something that I owe a studio a script, and I've had, after piddling around with several drafts thinking I knew what it was about, I finally figured out what it was about, and I have all these scenes I really, really don't want to get rid of. And I'm spending all this time trying to work those scenes into this new idea, and it's nuts. I'm glad we talked about this, because now I know I've got to get rid of those things. It's a hard question, but I think you've got to get to know people who know that company and find out who in that company is who you need to talk to. I was brought on to, Rick Moranis was sort of attached to Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. He was becoming unattached, so I think that's what part of the job was making sure Rick stayed with it. On What About Bob, about halfway into the, I think I took the job, and then there was a writer's strike in '88. So I couldn't write. But I remember running into Alvin Sargent and we were saying, Bill Murray would really be the right guy for Bob. The way he looks when he's in his little Bermuda shorts. That's Bob. So, but he wasn't attached and he didn't know about us. We just sent it to him, and once it was done, it felt to me and Alvin and Laura like there was just nobody else who was right for it. And that was, given that Disney and Bill hated each other, it was that was a real test. It took a year to get them to even speak, much less make a deal. So,
Make it easier or helpful?
I personally think it's not a good idea to write for an actor. I mean, when you're done, you should know who they are. And nowadays, maybe more than ever, the studio wants to know that there are at least 4 or 5 actors or more of star, who have star value that can do your main roles, because their first question is who's in it. So,
well, who's available? If the actor you want is booked for 8 years,
right.
You don't want to wait 8 years to
That's
get your
right.
movie made.
That's right. But they're all unavailable, and they're all uninterested. So you just have to, but you don't want to write yourself. I mean, what about that was kind of stupid because I wrote myself into a corner. I could not imagine anybody else but Bill Murray doing it, but so I think to the extent that you know that it's good for somehow right for both Ben Stiller and Will Ferrell, and would work for Vince Vaughn, and might work for Jim Carrey, that it could work for all those people. That just gives the studio more confidence that if they take the risk of buying your script without an actor attached, that there are enough possibilities out there that it's worth the risk. Otherwise, they're going to say, get one of those actors and then we'll talk. To me, writing for one of those people, I think the only pitfall is that you write what you think they can do and what you think they want to do or what you've seen them do. And a lot of the better actors want to sort of grow and change and do different kind of stuff. So they get a lot of script, just like writers are asked to write things that, like they just wrote. Actors see a lot of scripts that are just like the stuff they just did, and they don't like it, so they would rather see stuff that's original. So to the extent that it's, you're writing for somebody and it's something different than they've ever done, that may really work. If it's like their last 2 or 3 movies, probably not.
I'm James Jordan. Hope you enjoyed this video. For links to other videos and lots of free articles about screenwriting, please visit candidcoverage.com. Thank you for watching.